District for Thursday, March 9, 2017. Director Barnes, would you lead us in the pledge, please?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Director. We begin tonight with the Metro Cable announcement. The open session meeting is videotaped for cablecast on Metro Cable 14, replay on Saturday, March 11, 2017 at 12 noon, and Sunday, March 12, 2017 at 9 a.m. on Channel 14. Webcast is at www.sacmetrocable.tv. The open session meetings are also available for viewing on the district website at www.metrofire.ca.gov. Now is the time for public comment, public to discuss matters of interest that are whether on or not on the agenda. Is there any speakers?
There are no speakers this evening.
Are there any speakers, I should have said? Before we get to the consent calendar, Ms. Bonilla, you have something to add about that.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. There is a correction needing to be made under consent item number 2, the action summary minutes from February 23rd, 2017. The action item number 2, industrial disability retirement for Philip Zidek, was a motion made by Director Gould and seconded by Director Clark and carried unanimously by members present. So that is how the minutes will read.
Okay. Any comments or questions about this change to the minutes? All right. Any comments or questions about the consent calendar?
Mr. Chair, I make a motion we adopt.
Thank you. We've got a motion and a second. Can we get the vote, please?
Director Gould.
Aye.
Director Barnes.
Aye.
Sheets.
Aye.
Clark.
Aye.
Kelly.
Aye.
And Wood.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Thank you. At this time, we're going to go into closed session, and we will be back as quickly as we can. Council, would you report out, please?
Yes, the board met in closed session to consider the workers' compensation claim of David Hardman. The board voted unanimously to give authority to its third-party administrator to effectuate settlement of that claim. The board also met in closed session to consider the workers' compensation claim of David Johnson, and the board voted unanimously with one abstention to give authority to its third-party administrator to effectuate a settlement of that workers' compensation claim. The board also met in closed session with respect to the workers' compensation claim of John Costello, and the board voted unanimously to provide authority to its third-party administrator to effectuate a settlement of that workers' compensation claim. The board met in closed session also with respect to the workers' compensation claim of James Stewart and voted unanimously to provide authority to its third-party administrator to effectuate settlement of that claim. The board also met in closed session to consider the industrial disability retirement matters of two employees, David Hardman no action was taken on that matter. And employee David Johnson, no action was taken in closed session on that matter. That's all.
Thank you very much. We'll move on to presentation items. Our first one is with Board Clerk Pania.
Good evening, Directors and Chief Harms. Tonight I'm here to present on the work that staff has done with the California Fair Political Practices Commission to amend our Conflict of Interest Code. First, I want you to know that Metro Fire has been required to review the code that's on file biennially, with our last review being in September of 2016. It was during that time that we determined there would be an amendment necessary. A few of the components we looked at were whether the code was within 5 years of adoption, which it was last adopted in 2009, so we were beyond that 5-year mark. Additionally, there were substantial changes organizationally, and these changes included positions that had been eliminated, positions being renamed, and positions being added and needing to be classified. So in January 2017, staff submitted a request for amendment to the FPPC, and they began the review process. This included getting clarifying questions answered. We were required to submit some job descriptions for the new positions that were being added, and they evaluated and made a few changes and suggestions to the code amendment. Where we are now is we're beginning the 45-day comment period. So the FPPC has concluded their review, and we're able to start the public and employee 45-day comment period. That is going to begin tomorrow, March 10th, and is going to last until April 23rd. When that comment period ends, we will submit a few things to the FPPC. One is that the public notice was made and that the employees were notified of that comment period. Any comments that are received are also going to be submitted. Provided there are no substantial changes to the code, the FPPC will go ahead and finalize things, and the code will be effective 30 days from that date. So we are looking, best case scenario, to have a new code on file in the end of May this year. That concludes my presentation, and I would be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you very much. Any of the board members have questions or comments for Ms. Pania? Wonderful. Thank you for all your work.
You're welcome.
Moving on now to action items. Mid-year budget review. CFO Thomas.
It's not working.
Now it's working. Good evening. Okay, I'm here this evening to present the mid-year budget recommended for fiscal year 2016-17. And just to talk to you a little bit about our budget process, we conduct the mid-year budget review based on a review of the second quarter results. So what we're looking at are the actual results for the first half of the fiscal year 2016-17, which is the 6 months ended December 31st, 2016. And then we're also looking at what our projections are for the remainder of the fiscal year based on what we know as of this point in time. So the adjustments that we're talking about tonight are really presented as a result of that additional information that we have now that we did not have when the board voted on and approved the final budget that we currently have in place. The proposed adjustments to the budget were presented to the Finance and Audit Committee at the February 23rd meeting 2 weeks ago. We did make certain changes after that presentation based on additional new information that we received, and the result of those changes was actually to improve the net position largely by shifting of some expenditures out into next fiscal year, and I'll talk a little bit about those as we move through the presentation. So most of the mid-year adjustments that are being recommended to the budget relate to the general fund. My presentation tonight will focus largely on the general fund, and that's what you see here on this slide is the general fund budget. So the first column that says final fiscal year 2016-17, that's the currently adopted budget. The next column over, mid-year fiscal year 16-17, is what we're recommending tonight become the mid-year budget. And then the last column is the difference between those two and essentially represents our recommended mid-year adjustments. So looking at revenues, we currently have a budget of about $178.9 million. We're recommending a budget of $182.2 million for a mid-year adjustment of an additional $3.3 million in general fund revenues. And I'll get into the detail of what's behind that as we get into the presentation. Expenditures, if you look at the total expenditure line, we currently have a budget of $179.1 million. We're recommending a total expenditure budget of $183.9 million for a mid-year adjustment of $4.8 million in additional expenditures. You can see looking at that line right below total expenditures, revenues less expenditures, because we are adding more expenditures than we're adding revenue. We have a $1.5 million negative adjustment in that. However, if you look down below in the transfers, you can see that that is more than offset by a reduction in total transfers. So if you look at the transfer from the general fund to the capital facilities fund, we have a $2.7 million reduction in that amount that needs to come from the general fund to fund the costs in the capital facilities fund. So because that reduction is larger than what we saw as the negative impact on the revenues and expenditures, the overall bottom line, if you look at the bottom of this chart, revenues less expenses plus transfers, is that we're going from a current budget, which has approximately $2 million deficit, which means a $2 million use of reserves, to a mid-year budget with approximately $700,000 deficit or use of reserves, so an overall improvement of about $1.3 million. So looking at revenues a little bit more closely, I mentioned that we're recommending an increase in revenues in our revenue budget of $3.3 million, and listed on this slide are the primary factors contributing to that increase. So deployment revenue, based on our actual experience this year in terms of the deployments, we're adding in $4.2 million in additional revenue. You'll see when we get to expenses that is offset somewhat by the expense coming in for labor of $3.2 million. But because we're recovering the labor costs as well as administrative and vehicle costs, there is about a $1 million net amount that's coming into the budget as a result of that. Looking at our medic cost recovery revenues, this is actually an area where we're recommending a decrease. Overall, we're looking at about a $600,000 decrease in this revenue source. We're based on our year-to-date results so far in this revenue category. About halfway through the year, we were only at about 46% of what we would have expected in revenues. So we're looking at an overall reduction in revenues due to district transports, or as a result of district transports, based on the year-to-date trend. We think that's about a $2.4 million reduction. However, that's offset by a $1.8 million increase due to transports on the AMR units that we have operating under contract. So that was effective December 1st, where we are receiving revenue from the operations of those units, and we expect that that's going to be offset by about $1.2 million in cost to have that service provided. And you'll see that when we get to the expense slide. Looking at our GEMT revenue, that's Ground Emergency Medical Transport. It's a supplemental reimbursement program. We have prior year amounts there that we've been expecting in reimbursements from the state that have been held up. This $1.2 million, I think this is the third year that it's been budgeted for and not yet received. It's held up as the result of an unrelated state audit that we continue to check in on, and does not appear as if it will be received this year. So we're recommending that it be taken out of the mid-year budget this year. That reduction is offset somewhat, a small amount, by about $100,000 increase in our current year reimbursement. So we're getting a little more than we originally anticipated for that. And then finally, looking at our property taxes and redevelopment agency revenues, based on the first installment of the property tax revenues that we received this year, we're recommending an overall increase of about $800,000 in those revenues. Turning to look at expenses and labor costs overall, the recommendation here is to increase the labor budget by $2.8 million from $154.8 million to $157.6 million. And you can see listed here below the reasons for that. The first being deployments, which I mentioned when we were talking about revenues. So we have $3.2 million in labor costs that's added in to reflect the cost of that deployment over time. And that's more than offset by the $4.2 million coming in revenues. Workers' compensation, we're recommending an increase of $400,000 in workers' compensation based on our year-to-date activity and claims payments. We think that this budget does need to get adjusted. It's currently at $2 million. We're recommending that it go to $2.4 million. Sick leave buybacks, again, based on what we've seen in terms of year-to-date activity there and how that's trending, we think that we need about a $300,000 adjustment increase in that budget item. And then the following two are actually reductions. So looking at our holiday in lieu pay, and really due to the timing of when those cash outs are happening, we think that we can have a $700,000 reduction in that budget category this fiscal year. We do expect, again, because this is a timing issue, that we'll see a corresponding increase next year. So I'll be probably talking to you about that in next year's budget. But we think this year there'll be about a $700,000 reduction there. And then shift overtime, similarly, really just looking at the spending so far year to date, we think that there's about half $500,000 of shift overtime that can be reduced out of the budget. And then I did want to mention this bullet down here at the bottom. Although the net impact is not significant, we do have a lot of savings due to position vacancies, so salaries and benefits costs that we had originally budgeted for that aren't getting paid out as salaries and benefits because we have vacancies, about $6.4 million. But that's offset by $6.3 million that we anticipate in additional callback overtime. And really what's happening there is we have the same number of spots that we need to be filled on a daily basis. So whether we have the full-time positions or it's being filled with overtime, we have that cost. It's just a shifting of where that cost is. Where we originally anticipated it to be was in the salaries and benefits, and now based on what we've seen and what we expect for the rest of the year, it's going to be in the overtime line item. So looking at the other general fund expenditures, in the services and supplies category, the recommendation is for an increase of $2.2 million, so going from $21 million to $23.2 million. $1.2 million of that is for the AMR contract to provide that ambulance service. As I mentioned earlier, there's a revenue offset that goes along with that, but that expense does need to be added into the budget. And then we have a $1 million increase, which is due purely to reclassifications of expenditures from capital outlay in the capital facilities fund to services and supplies in the general fund. So there's an offsetting reduction in the capital facilities fund. We're reclassifying where those expenditures are in our budget. It's really more of an accounting issue than anything else. And then finally, other changes, there's a $200,000 decrease due to reclassification of debt service out of the general fund to the capital facilities fund, and you'll see that offset there on the capital facilities fund as well. And then that $2.7 million net reduction in the transfer to the capital facilities fund that I talked about on the first slide, and that has a direct impact on the bottom line result in the general fund. So looking at that $2.7 million reduction in the transfer from the general fund to the capital facilities fund, these are the reasons why that's happening. The largest is that we have a $1.1 million reduction in debt service in the capital facilities fund. that's the result of the timing of our capital lease financing. So when we originally put our budget together, we assumed that that financing would happen earlier in the year and that we would have debt service payment associated with it this fiscal year. It ended up happening later in the year, and our first payment won't actually be due until next fiscal year. So we'll have the same total amount that's going to get paid over the 5 years of the lease. We just won't have any of that cost in this fiscal year budget. And then the next item is the capital outlay reduction of $1 million. That's the reverse of what we saw on the general fund side of things. So we're just reclassifying it from the general fund, or excuse me, from the capital facilities fund to the general fund. In addition to that, we had a net reduction in total capital outlay expenditures of about $400,000. That also is the result of some costs being shifted out into next year based on the timing of projects. So work that we thought was going to be done this year, now some of it will be done next year, and that cost will be reflected in the next fiscal year budget. And then a few other smaller adjustments. We actually had an increase in financing revenue of about $100,000 just based on the actual cost of the equipment that we financed, and an increase in the availability of fund balance in the capital facilities fund of about $100,000. And that was the result of actually having audited results for that fund and being able to adjust that upwards a bit. So looking at the bottom line, what all this means, these mid-year adjustments result in a net general fund deficit or a use of general fund reserves of about $700,000. That compares to the current deficit of $2 million. So it is an improvement. However, as I discussed, that improvement largely results from the shifting out of costs into future years. The projected reserve balance at the end of this year would be $21 million, or about 11.7% of net budgeted expenditures, and that compares to about 11.1% based on the currently adopted budget. So you see that improvement there resulting from the lower use of reserves. So with that, the recommendation is to adopt approve the resolutions adopting the mid-year budget amendments for the fiscal year ending June 30th, 2017, and I'd be happy to take any questions.
Do you have any questions for CFO Thomas?
I have a question.
Director.
On our deployment, it's a mutual assistance. It kind of compensates itself if we had to use from another agency. How do we carry that?
Well, so the deployments that we're reflecting here are ones in which we're paid to send people to incidents in the state. Mm-hmm. So we're reimbursed according to what our average labor rate is, to reflect the fact that not only are we paying the people who are actually at the incident, but that we're also backfilling behind those people when they're not filling their normal roles.
And being a good neighbor.
And contributing, yes.
I think you're maybe confusing two things. One is the automatic aid system that we see here that we have with the city or our neighbors. Right. What deployments are truly the state calling and saying that we need a strike team somewhere across the state. And on that one there, we have apparatus that we maintain, but truly the cost of going and the cost of backfilling is covered 100% then.
By the state or whoever that agency
yes.
is.
Correct.
Of course.
Mm-hmm. Any other questions for CFO Thomas?
Just a quick
Director?
clarification. Thank you, sir. CFO Thomas, quick general question here. It looks like we have about, because of the timing of payments that would happen into the next fiscal year, it's approximately $1.3 million that the payments will not come due until 17-18?
Well, on the debt service that I talked about, we would have had that payment next year as well. We're shifting out the number of years that it's going to cover. So yes, it's about 1.2 million coming out of this year's budget as a result of that.
Okay, yeah. And then the 700,000, I'm sure it's here. I just missed it. But does it come out? Are we planning to take that out of reserves?
Right. So when our budget is reflecting a deficit, that's essentially what that means, is that we are spending $700,000 more than we expect to come in revenues. So that would be a reduction in reserves. If the opposite were true and we were projecting that we would have a surplus, that would be adding to reserves.
Any other questions for CFO Thomas? All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I have one other.
Oh, yes, sir.
On the, it's on page P93, Board of Directors budget.
Yes.
What it consisted of.
So you're referring to the budgets by division, we reflect the board of directors as a division, which includes the costs, the salaries and benefits costs of the board clerk and any other compensation, and then it also includes other items, services and supplies items that are associated with the board and the board clerk.
Instance, what? Do you have any idea?
Sure. Yes. So it includes travel expenses, supply expenses, any services. I can't speak specifically to what's in that budget, but those would be the other items that would be included.
And that's divided among or between the board of directors?
That's the overall budget that's used by the board.
How's that done? From the Sacramento Suburban, board directors had a certain amount, a budget for the year, certain amount. But there's also, if there was some other extenuating circumstances, the board could vote on it or whatever. Do you have a list of how that budget has been divvied out or used for what?
We have records of what the actual expenses have been, but I would defer to the board clerk and the fire chief in terms of how the expenditure decisions are made.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'd like to see that copy of it. And also, we are a member of the Chamber of Commerce too, and there are some organization. There is an expenditure on those.
I'm sorry, I'm not sure I understood your question.
Commerce.
The Chamber of Commerce.
Yeah.
Is your question?
As a member of that, those are funds that goes out for that also.
Yeah, our membership costs are reflected in the budget. I don't know specifically about that one, but all the membership costs are included in the budget.
You could show the breakout somewhere.
Of what our membership costs are? Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for CFO Thomas? No. All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Director Wood?
Yes, we need to take each of the resolutions A through D individually.
Mr. Chair, my memory serves me right. I believe Director Kelly does a fabulous job at this. Correct?
I'd be happy to.
He
That's
does.
what I thought. He was pretty efficient last year when we did this.
And we'll alternate second.
Fine.
Huh?
We'll
Was
alternate
busy
seconding.
reading something else. All right. Mr. Chairman, if it pleases the group, I would move the approval of the mid-year budget review. Resolution A, the 2016-2017 mid-year budget adjustment for the general operating fund of 212A.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Would we call the vote, please?
Director Gale.
Yes.
Gould.
Aye.
Jones.
Aye.
Sheets.
Aye.
Clark.
Aye.
Kelly.
Aye.
And Wood.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Mr. Chairman, if it pleases the group, I move Resolution 2016-2017 mid-year budget adjustment for the Capital Facilities Fund 212D.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Would you call the vote, please?
Director Gale.
Yes.
Gould.
Aye.
Jones.
Aye.
Sheets.
Aye.
Clark.
Aye.
Kelly.
Aye.
And Wood.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Mr. Chairman, if it would please the group, I move Resolution 2016-2017 mid-year budget adjustment for the Grants Fund 212G.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Would you call the vote, please?
Director Gale,
Yes.
Gould,
Aye.
Jones,
Aye.
Sheets,
Aye.
Clark, Kelly,
Aye.
and Wood.
Aye.
Motion passes.
And Mr. Chairman, if it pleases the group, item D, Resolution 2016-2017 Mid-Year Budget Adjustment for the Leased Properties Fund 212L.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Would you call the vote, please?
Director Gale,
Yes.
Gould,
Aye.
Jones,
Aye.
Sheets,
Aye.
Clark, Kelly,
Aye.
and Wood.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Wonderful. Next up on the action items is the industrial disability retirement of David Hardman. Do I have a motion on that?
Mr. Chairman, if it pleases the group, I move item number 2 on the action items, the industrial disability for retirement for David Hardman.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Can we get the vote, please?
Director Gale,
Yes.
Gould,
Aye.
Jones,
Aye.
Sheets,
Aye.
Clark, Kelly,
Aye.
and Wood.
Aye.
Motion passes.
And next up, we have for consideration the industrial disability retirement of David Johnson.
Mr. Chairman, if it pleases the group, I would move the item number 3, the industrial disability retirement for David Johnson.
I have a motion and a second. Would you call the vote, please?
Director Gale,
Yes on the recommendation staff.
Gould,
Still aye.
Jones,
Aye.
Sheets,
Aye.
Clark, Kelly,
Aye.
and Wood.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Thank you so much. Moving on to reports, President's report. I have nothing to report, and so we'll move on to the Fire Chief's report. Chief Harms.
Mr. President and Directors, first off, I'd just like to comment on how happy I am with CFO Thomas. I've spent quite a bit of time in the last month and a half together going through and the mid-year budget, and then starting now the budget process for the 17-18. And her and the staff has been tremendous in going through and taking some extra time explaining things to me. We received a notice from David Magnino from the Sacramento County EMS Agency. They did a review of our transports and our documentation of the second quarter of 2016, which was April, May, and June. And 100% of the records that they pulled at that time all met standards. So it was a very good review from an outside agency of our EMS service delivery and a review of the actual providers and the documentation out there of that. A little bit of reorganization within the organization right now is that the information technology group has been I moved it from the administrative side of it over to the support services, and the community risk reduction or fire prevention has been moved from support services to the administration side. And it was just looking at it and looking at areas and where they lined up where they lined up with the best people for being able to manage those and being able to get the work done. So very good. We had a promotion on March 6th of single role paramedic Christian Geisler became a paramedic. We also had some retirements at the end of February. Brian Sukatri, 24 years of service. He was a captain. An office technician, Alex Lawrence, after 18 years of service, retired. And Captain Alan Gitru, 26 years of service with the district, retired on March 1st. One of the items that, again, was in the budget we talked about was vacancies and the salary savings from vacancies and using that as overtime. This past couple weeks, we've sat down with labor and really looked at where we at and what does our hiring look like coming up, and doing a little bit more of a long-term plan. And we're looking at just knowing where we are today, the possibilities of retirements, a number of promotions that are coming up that we'll look at. We're starting another academy class at the end of July, and then after the first of the year in 2018, starting another academy class. And looking at some of the options of being able to work together with our partners here in the region of either the city, along with some of the other folks, as far as partnering together to run those academies. We had a promotion ceremony on March 1st. We had 18 honorees over the last 6 months. We had a great event on the 4th, St. Baldrick's, over at the Galleria, and The team overall, as far as public safety, raised about $12,000, which was number one in that one, and actually was number two in overall in the competition. We had a great showing of 28 people that were there and shaved their heads, and obviously I did not, but I was there to support them when they did that portions of it. I'd just like to thank Captain Bob Bruce and Engineer Kevin Summers, is that those two guys have worked tirelessly to be able to bring these things and bring the folks together to be able to do that. Attended the crab feed, my third crab feed. I'm starting to become pretty good at it now, on last Saturday. And the last thing was this morning, I had an opportunity to kind of be with the Metro Chamber, and they had a state legislative summit. Myself and Chief Johnson and Jeff Fry were able to attend that. Some of the interesting topics when they talked about the state and at a federal level, really some of the ones were about the EPA in the future, immigration, free trade, healthcare. Again, as you can imagine, was quite the interesting conversation. Infrastructure and transportation seemed to be some of the top subjects that were discussed during that time. And for you all, that I will be leaving on Sunday on the Capital Region trip, and we'll be back on Wednesday. And that ends my report, unless somebody has some questions.
Any questions for the Chief? Wonderful. Thank you, Chief. Moving on to the operations report, Chief Bridge. Oh. Welcome.
Hello. Take just a moment here. Board members, Chief Harms, Assistant Chief Chris Quinn here, representing operations with the Ops Board report. Since our last board meeting on February 16th, we've had 5,802 total calls, with 15 of those being structure fires. From the EMS side of the house, we've had 2,768 dispatches and transported 69.5% of the time. Our partners at AMR had 352 dispatches and transported 56.8% of the time. If you'll indulge me, from the operations side, I'd also like to briefly just give a presentation on what our members and professional staff, really the entire agency, does before the bell rings and before that alarm in an all-risk agency, and what that looks like, and really what the last 2 weeks, effectively since the last board meeting, have looked like in our agency. And so I'll refer you, if you'll indulge me, to some of the slides that I'm going to go through on some of the types of things that people are doing, and with strong support from the entire organization to prepare our members for the response to the public. First of all, you've been hearing about the professional development program, or really a monthly program on a variety of topics to better prepare our members for positions of leadership, along with skills that will enhance their service delivery to the citizens that we serve. So this is taking place here typically at the SESC with members of the organization, providing some enhanced leadership training, conflict resolution, those types of programs. From battalion level training, and again, this is really all over the last couple of weeks. These are the types of things that our members are engaged in before that bell's ringing to prepare them. Companies at a battalion level meeting with BCs and ACs to discuss command and control, recent incident reviews. Once we have a large fire or a major incident, we're discussing that so that we can become more safe, effective, and efficient the next time the bell rings. And of course, more leadership training and planning, succession planning, those types of things, preparing members. We had a boat operations course. Being an all-risk agency here, it's not just about fire, it's about service delivery to the members of the community and how we can best serve them. And so sometimes that is in a water rescue configuration, be it flood or swift-moving water. Our members are preparing themselves there. A fire behavior course is going on, recognizing that there's been advances in research with UL and NIST. So to start that off at the direction of Chief Harms, the chief officers are first going through that with a fantastic cadre of members in our agency from the delivery side, so that we're prepared to roll that out to all the members on the line in April. You see more of the members here just preparing and listening and learning. an all hazards incident management team course. Not only are we serving the members of our community here in Sacramento County, but frequently we're called on to assist state, local, and federal organizations with management of large-scale incidents. That could be a large wildfire, a flood, an earthquake, incidents that our members have been on, such as Hurricane Katrina or Rita, or the 9/11 incident. And this is where this happens. This is the proving ground to train our members to be able to manage those incidents in an efficient manner and bring that back to our organization as well. This has been taking place this week for the chief officers in our organization. You can see more of that training and presentation going on here, with breakout sessions and simulations in a real-time configuration so that we are better prepared and from a planning phase and know what to expect, so resource ordering can happen early so that service delivery happens in, again, a safe, effective, and efficient manner to take care of the public in which we serve. L280 you've heard about. It really starts with that followership to leadership, and this is for the entire group of members in our organization, from professional staff to the young firefighter that just comes on the job, to be able to take those roles, working together across disciplines within the organization. They have a little fun while they're doing it too, but right here what you're seeing is problem solving and kind of that small group dynamic, allowing people to take leadership roles where maybe they wouldn't originally or initially be comfortable. This is where it happens in the training ground, so that they're prepared again when the emergency strikes. And then every day, of course, the company evolutions that are taking place. So those young firefighters that are checking off a task book or new officers, here's where they conduct that preparation so they get better at the skills that in an all-risk agency that we deliver to the public every day. So thank you for allowing me on behalf of operations to share some of the things that our members are engaged in every single day before the bell rings.
Thank you so much, Chief Quinn. Any questions or comments for the Chief?
Thank you.
Thank you so much. We'll move on now to General Counsel's report. Counsel Avra.
No report.
Firefighters Local 522, do we have anybody from there? All right. Committee and delegate reports. The Executive Committee has not met, and we do not have a meeting currently scheduled. The Comm Center JPA, Chief Bridge. All right, looks like their next meeting is going to be April 5th. California Fire and Rescue Training JPA, Director Kelly.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, the JPA has scheduled a meeting. It'll be March 16th, 4 p.m. Next door.
Wonderful, thank you. Director Kelly, you're up next for the Finance and Audit Committee.
I would defer to Director Sheets, as I was not at that meeting and she covered it.
The next Finance and Audit Committee meeting is Thursday, March 23rd, 5:30.
Thank you, Director. Director Gould, Policy Committee?
No report.
All right. Moving on then to board members' questions and comments. Director Gale, start with you.
I really appreciate the professionalism of this district, and with the number of retirements, is it difficult to find the kind of people that you would need for these positions in such a market? And, you know, I see the number of experience that goes with retirement. And to fill these positions, we've been fortunate enough to find the same kind of quality of people to fill those positions.
You're exactly right, is that the experience that leaves is multiple years.
Yes.
So just the 3 people that left is probably 65 years of experience that goes out the door. One of our challenges is that across the region here and across the state, everybody is seeing the same amount of people leaving. So the competition for the individuals out there is very strong. And where maybe in the past, and it's not just in California, it's across the United States, where maybe in the past you would see 400 or 500 people take a test, you're seeing maybe 60 or 65 people take a test. In the past you would have interviews and you would not have anybody not show up for a interview. And nowadays what you're seeing is you may have 20% of the people not show up for an interview because either they have gotten an interview or they have gotten hired by some other agency. One of the things that I think we enjoy compared to smaller agencies is that we don't have a lot of people that leave here. Is a lot of people come, they like Metro, they like being here, they like the activity level, they like the training, and they like being a member of the district. Some of the other smaller districts or departments lose people just because they don't have as many opportunities. So definitely one of our priorities as we hit 2017 and as we move forward is that recruitment and retention and finding that right person for the district.
And the following one, I was looking at one of the TV programs today, and one of our great airborne units will be going to the Middle East, Iran, or one of the other places, that your prayers go with them. And I remember the same group when I was in Korea, and they'll do a great job, and our prayers go out with them, please.
All right. Thank you, Director. Director Gold?
No comments.
Director Sheets?
I just wanted to thank Amanda and your team for all of that wealth of knowledge, and then congratulate all the personnel on their promotions, and best wishes to all of the retirees.
Director Clark?
No comment.
Director Kelly?
I would like to echo the comments that Director Sheets so eloquently put.
Director Jones?
Thank you. Ditto to everything previously said, and I'd like to add 3 or 4 quick items. Director Gill, just FYI, last century when I showed up to take my firefighter test, there were 3,000 applicants. Mm-hmm. So that shows the huge change over the decades.
Yep.
All righty. On a much more positive note here, I would like to give a shout out to Chris Dargan, one of our community risk specialists, and his ongoing participation in the American River Parkway Coalition. It's a great opportunity for Metro to reach out and truly participate. There are so many neighborhood groups that attend these meetings, as well as county staff, parks and regional parks, etc. And it's a great opportunity to have Metro involved in a true grassroots coalition type of event. So I appreciate that ongoing support. Second, Chief Quinn, thank you very much for the PowerPoint presentation. Excellent to show what goes on before the bell hits. That's good to remember. And lastly, Chief Arms, good luck and safe travels this upcoming week. Best of luck.
Thank you, Director. The only thing I would add, I echo what everyone else has said, but I think EMS, I guess, is the right division to get the credit for the Sac County audit results, the 100%. That's absolutely awesome. So they should definitely all get a pat on the back. And with that, we are adjourned. We'll be back on March 23rd at 6 o'clock.